Europe's late June heatwave has already been confirmed by official mortality monitoring to have killed more than 10,000 people in a single week, with a separate preliminary academic estimate putting the true toll as high as 20,000 once the full picture is eventually confirmed. That alone would normally be the story. Here is what forecasters are now watching build behind it. According to meteorologists tracking the pattern in real time, a fourth major heatwave of the summer is already forming across Europe, arriving on the heels of a season that has already produced record-breaking heat, catastrophic wildfires, and a death toll researchers describe as historically unprecedented. This new heat dome is forecast to settle over Iberia and France before expanding toward Germany, the Baltic region, and the wider Mediterranean, with temperatures expected to push past 40 degrees Celsius and potentially reach 45 in parts of Spain and Portugal. This is the story of exactly what killed so many people in June, why the atmospheric setup responsible for it never actually went away, and why forecasters say this next heat dome, arriving on ground already stripped of moisture by the heat waves before it, could prove just as dangerous as the one that just devastated the continent. No exaggeration, just what Euromomo, the World Weather Attribution Group, and the meteorologists tracking this exact pattern are actually reporting. Drop a comment and tell me if you are anywhere across Europe right now, bracing for this next round of heat, because forecasters say the ground underneath this next heat wave is in considerably worse shape than it was heading into the one before it, and that difference alone is worth understanding. I read every one of these. If you want grounded coverage instead of recycled panic, subscribe. It is free, and a like helps this reach people before this next heat dome fully arrives. Let us go for 5,000 likes on this one. Now let us get into it. To understand why forecasters are treating this next heat wave with genuine concern, rather than simply calling it more of the same, you first need to understand what already happened in June and why it proved so lethal. Between June 22nd and June 28th, Europe experienced what the World Weather Attribution Group formally concluded was the most severe heat wave ever recorded across the region it studied, a heat wave the group also determined would have been virtually impossible without the warming. Humans have already caused official mortality monitoring. From Euromomo, the network backed by the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control and the World Health Organization, confirmed more than 10,000 excess deaths during that single week, with the overwhelming majority among people aged 65 and older. A separate, not yet peer-reviewed academic estimate from Christopher Callahan at Indiana University put the true toll considerably higher, at more than 20,000 deaths, a gap that reflects the genuine difference between confirmed official data and a faster independent model built to estimate the fuller picture sooner than official channels typically can. The mechanism behind that heat wave, and the one now forming behind it, is the same atmospheric pattern meteorologists have been tracking across Europe for the entire summer. A stubborn, slow-moving ridge of high pressure in its more extreme form, described as an omega block for the shape it traces across an upper-level weather map. Traps hot, dry air in place for extended stretches, rather than allowing the normal churn of Atlantic weather systems to move it along. That same mechanism has now cycled through Europe 3 separate times already this summer, and meteorologists tracking the pattern say a fourth version is already forming as July gives way to August, centered initially over Iberia and France before expanding to engulf most of the continent, from Iberia through France, Germany, and the Baltic region, and across Central Europe and the Mediterranean, a stretch of the calendar when tens of millions of residents are also on summer vacation across exactly the regions expected to see the worst of it. Unlike a single storm that passes through and moves on within a day or two, this kind of blocking pattern can hold a region under direct, uninterrupted sun for a week or more at a time, which is precisely what allows repeated heat waves to compound on top of one another, rather than each one starting fresh against a fully recovered landscape. Here's why forecasters are specifically worried about this particular heat wave, rather than treating it as routine repetition. The ground beneath this next heat dome is arriving in considerably worse condition than it was heading into June's event, since successive heat waves have already stripped soil moisture across huge stretches of the continent, and forecasters tracking the seasonal outlook note that even a moderate August hot spell could now have a stronger impact than usual, since short-lived thunderstorms are unlikely to meaningfully reverse the accumulated water deficit already built up. That combination, extreme heat arriving on top of ground already parched from the heat waves before it, is precisely the setup that has already fueled some of the summer's worst wildfires. And meteorologists tracking this new heat wave have specifically flagged that the combination of high heat and dry, moderately strong winds will support an ongoing extreme fire risk across southwestern Europe, along with an additional wildfire threat stretching across Italy, the Alpine region, and the Balkans, conditions capable of igniting new fires and letting them spread rapidly given how low relative humidity and elevated wind speeds have become across the region. It is worth being precise about how forecasters expect this specific heat wave to evolve, because the pattern is not expected to sit static in one place the way the phrase heat dome sometimes implies. Seasonal. Outlook models tracking the pattern through the second week of August show the heat gradually shifting eastward, with the ECMWF ensemble forecast identifying a high-pressure ridge extending into Europe from marine heat wave conditions already established in the Mediterranean Sea and off the southwest coast of Europe, continuing to subtract soil moisture as drought expands across the continent through the first half of the month. By the third week of August, that same modeling shows the heat wave's core continuing to expand eastward into the western Black Sea region, with the CFS model maintaining the underlying hot weather pattern through the middle of the month. Ioana Vergini, founder of the weather forecasting platform WFY24, told Euronews that seasonal updates issued in early July all tilt the odds toward a warmer than normal August across Europe, with the strongest and most confident heat signal sitting specifically over the Mediterranean and southeastern Europe, in what she described as recurring heat clusters across Iberia, Italy, Greece, and parts of the Balkans. It is worth being clear about what remains genuinely uncertain here, because seasonal outlooks, even confident ones, are not the same thing as a locked-in forecast. The exact peak temperatures, precise geographic footprint, and final duration of this fourth heat wave could still shift as the pattern continues developing over the coming days, and researchers studying atmospheric blocking patterns caution that while these patterns, including heat domes and the flooding events they can trigger once they finally break down, have nearly tripled in frequency according to a 2025 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, that trend describes an increased likelihood rather than a certainty for any single event. What forecasters are saying with genuine confidence is that the underlying conditions favoring another severe, potentially lethal heat wave, a persistent blocking pattern layered on top of soil and vegetation already stripped of moisture by 3 prior heat events this summer, are already firmly in place. The reason this next heat wave carries the same lethal potential as the one that just killed more than 10,000 people comes down to the same structural gap researchers have been documenting across the continent for years. Centralized residential air conditioning remains rare across much of Europe, meaning emergency rooms across the region are bracing for another surge of heat stroke cases even before this next heat dome has fully arrived, while the same vulnerable population, primarily people over 65, remains disproportionately at risk in exactly the same way it was during June's event. Southern Europe in particular has absorbed roughly 2/3 of all heat. Related deaths across the continent in each of the past several summers, researchers have studied in detail, with Italy recording the highest absolute toll of any European country repeatedly, a pattern tied directly to the country's proportionally large elderly population and housing stock built decades before heat waves like this one became a regular seasonal occurrence, when most homes across the region were designed primarily to retain warmth through cold, damp winters rather than reject it during increasingly extreme summers. So what does all of this actually mean if you live anywhere across Europe or have travel plans to the region in the coming weeks? If you are anywhere across Iberia, France, Italy, or the Balkans specifically, the practical lesson is that this next heat wave deserves the same seriousness June's event received. Keep at least one room in your home genuinely cool, stay hydrated steadily throughout the day, avoid strenuous outdoor activity and direct sun during peak afternoon hours, and check on elderly relatives or neighbors living alone, since they remain the population most consistently at risk in every major European heat event researchers have studied. If you live near forested or dry spark a fire, including outdoor burning or machinery use during periods of extreme fire danger, given how explicitly forecasters have flagged the combination of heat and dry wind, supporting rapid fire spread across exactly this kind of terrain. If you are traveling to the region, build genuine flexibility into your plans, since both the heat itself and the wildfire risk it is expected to bring could affect transport, air quality, and access to certain areas with relatively little advance warning. The honest, grounded summary is this: Europe's late June heat wave has been confirmed by Euromomo as causing more than 10,000 excess deaths in a single week, with a preliminary, not yet peer-reviewed estimate putting the true toll as high as 20,000, making it, according to the World Weather Attribution Group, the most severe heat wave ever recorded across the region studied. A fourth major heat wave is already forming behind it, expected to bring temperatures past 40 degrees Celsius across Iberia and France before expanding toward Germany, the Baltic, and the wider Mediterranean, arriving on ground already stripped of moisture by the heat waves that preceded it, a combination forecasters say is already fueling an elevated wildfire threat across southwestern Europe, Italy, the Alps, and the Balkans. Seasonal models show this heat gradually expanding eastward through the middle of August, with the same structural vulnerabilities limited air conditioning access, and a large elderly population concentrated in southern Europe. Meaning this next heat wave carries genuine potential to prove just as dangerous as the one that already devastated the continent weeks earlier. We are going to keep tracking this exact pattern the way we tracked it today, straight from Euromomo, the World Weather Attribution Group, and the meteorologists actually forecasting this next heat dome, not recycled headlines. Subscribe so you do not miss it as this fourth heat wave fully develops over the coming days. Because based on everything we just walked through, this pattern has shown no sign of breaking down for the rest of the summer. And leave that comment below. Tell me if this changes how you think about traveling to southern Europe for the remainder of the summer. Because that question is exactly the one this entire video has been trying to help you answer, honestly. Because behind every one of these forecast maps is an elderly resident in Rome or Seville who survived June's heat wave and is now bracing for a second one before the summer is even over, an emergency room physician somewhere across southern Europe, already anticipating another surge of heat stroke patients, a firefighter in the Alps or the Balkans watching the same dry, gusty conditions that just fueled some of this summer's worst wildfires build right back up again, and a family somewhere across the Mediterranean coast trying to decide whether their long-planned August holiday is still worth the trip. 5,000 likes on this one. Let us go. See you in the next one.